Hello again, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of South Bay Sports Radio. On today's episode, I sat down with Greg Clark, the head coach of the Palos Verdes High boys basketball program. Greg and I talked about falling in love with basketball, his prep career, what drew him to coaching, what brought him to the West Coast, his mentors, and how tough competing in the Bay League is. Let's tune in. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of South Bay Sports Radio. I'm here this evening with Greg Clark, the current head basketball coach of the Palos Verdes High program. Greg, thank you for joining me.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Nick.
First things first, I want to hear about your basketball beginnings and how you fell in love with hoops.
Man, that's easy. So my dad was a pretty good player. I grew up in Wilmington, Delaware. My dad played at Louisiana High School, which is the equivalent in Delaware to Loyola, the big, old, all-boys Catholic high school. So I grew up, one of his good friends from high school had a son much older than me. So I grew up going to Sally's games to see Jason play when I was 7 years old. And they went to the state championship in 1991. And I went to, and then this Friday night, watching high school hoops with my dad, watching ESPN. I couldn't stop watching basketball. I loved playing it, but I watched it as much as I played it. I had a great group of friends I grew up with. We all loved to play. We had a pretty good grade school team. Back in Delaware, CYO is a pretty big deal. It's before all the AAU stuff. So some heated Catholic contests between St. Elizabeth and St. John's and St. Elizabeth and St. Edmunds. I went to St. E's. And it just started from there. And then I actually started out at Slavianum for 2 years, and it just wasn't for me. All my friends were at St. Mark's, which was the rival. So it's like me transferring from PV to Peninsula. It was a tough decision. My mom struggled with it. My dad obviously didn't love it, but he wanted me to go because that's where I was happy. I played 2 years at St. Mark's for Lee Fidley, who is a Delaware Hall of Fame coach, the best. To this day, the biggest influence on me as a coach. And his teams, when I was in the 7th grade in 1995, they won undefeated and won a state championship. And probably the greatest game I've ever seen live. Alex Carlson rattled in a half quarter down to win a state championship by 1. So it was to wrap up an undefeated season. So I've just loved the game since I was about 6 years old. And right after I graduated from St. Mark's, I was going to the University of Delaware. It's about 15 minutes from campus. And Sib asked me to come back and be an assistant coach in the program at 18. I spent a year as the JV assistant to Brian August, who was now the head baseball coach at Wilmington University back home. He's been to a couple College World Series, was a great minor league player. But he coached JV basketball when he was back from the season. That's what he was doing the off season. And then I got the freshman job when I was 19. So this is my 25th year coaching. So it's kind of always been in my blood. I took a couple years off. We'll get to that, obviously, but it's just who I am. It's just what I love to do. So that's the gist of it. That's the easy part.
That's the easy part. So you transfer high schools, but how would you describe yourself as a prep basketball player in Wilmington, Delaware?
I was a really smart player. I could make I was white boy in the corner. That's probably the best way to say it. I could make some shots. I knew what to do. Was an average, a pretty good defender, great positional defender. But we were really good. My junior year, I barely got off the bench. We were 22-3. We lost in the state semifinals. Should have won that game. We still talk about it to this day. You forget the wins, but the losses stick with you forever. And I played behind an all-state point guard, AJ Kalala. My senior year, I thought I was going to start, and then, we had a kid who didn't play as a sophomore. It was a first-team All-American soccer player, Adam Steller. He came back, and then we had a freshman named Shannon Davis, who ended up becoming the school's all-time leading scorer 4 years later. So I was the 7th man as a senior, contributed, played every game, played about, some nights I'd play 6 minutes, some nights I'd play 16. I wasn't a world beater, but I was a pretty smart player. Again, kind of a coach on the bench. Like if I fell zone, I'm screaming there in zone. So that's kind of who I've always been. But the best experience of my life, the best friends I ever had, would go back in a heartbeat just to be with my guys. And to this day, we're all really close. We play golf together. I have 3 teammates that actually live out here from across the country. We get together all the time, and it's it's when you go through it together and you have a brotherhood like that, it's great. So those 2 years were pretty special playing there. And then I coached there for 7. I spent a year as a JV assistant, 3 as the freshman head coach, and 3 as the JV head coach before I got my college job in 2007. So
Now, growing up in Delaware, you talked about University of Delaware being 15 minutes away from your high school, but what initially drew you to the university and what made you pursue a degree in economics?
well, bottom line was I should have got a teaching degree right away. I knew I wanted to coach, but I thought teachers didn't make any money. So I started out with it on an accounting path. And then I did that for 3 years. I interned for my going into my senior year. And I go, if I do this for the rest of my life, I'll jump off a building. This is the worst thing I've ever done in my life. So I kind of just switched out of that to get the degree in economics. And then luckily, right, I got the college job a little bit after I graduated. So it just kind of flowed in. I wish if I could go back and if I could tell any young coach, anybody with any aspirations to coach, get a teaching degree. You can always go back to business school or do something like that. But if you want to coach, that teaching degree gives you so many options at the high school level to secure your future, to actually make real money while you're doing it. They're always looking for coaches, and it's just, it's if you have a passion for coaching, getting a teaching credential is the thing. So the economics degree, I enjoy it. I liked economics. I think it's fun, but at the end of the day, I've never used it a day in my life to make any money. So, but that being said, I love the University of Delaware. It's a great school, a great community, great town. And it was a great deal. It was cheaper to go to Delaware than it was to go to St. Mark's. So, all being honest, back then in 2000, I think my tuition at St. Mark's was $5,000 and tuition at Delaware was $4,000. So it was never really a doubt to go to Delaware. It was just a great bang for your buck and, great time. And again, another great experience that I would never take back. It was worth it.
You began coaching at St. Mark's in 2000 before taking the head coaching job the next year. What drew you to coaching initially, and how would you describe your first few years as a coach?
My first few years, and what do they say? It's what you learn after you know it all that makes the difference. Like, I've always been a really good X's and O's guy. I don't have a problem saying that. I've always understood the game and could do that. But it's just managing the people. That's the hard part. It's we grew up in a different era, Nick. It was the old school, my way or the highway. The coach is the coach. You do what you're told. And luckily, Sid was like that. I mean, my high school coach was a hard ass, and we sit around on the bar stools joking about the stuff and all that kind of stuff, and he was great. But he that was what it was at school, so I just kind of emulated that. And because he hired me, they had to put up with it. That's just how it was back in the day. And then I've really grown, obviously, as a coach, and that's a different time, a different era, just getting to manage people. But you realize the X's and O's are 10% of it. It's really just, I think Phil Jackson once said basketball is a very simple game played by very complicated people. So it was realizing that it's not what I know, it's how I can communicate it and how I can get them to know it. And that's really the thing. And then realizing that, it's not about wins and losses, it's about developing players and things like that. One of my favorite stories that I tell to all my assistants now, my first year as a freshman coach, I think we went 14-2. We had a really good team, a really talented class. And obviously I'm feeling myself. I think I'm pretty good. It's all because of me. And then my second year was rough. We had not a lot of talent. And Stib always took the good players from freshmen and put them up on JV or varsity. Like, that was common. Like, so I got what was left over, and there wasn't a lot left over that year. And I was bitching and moaning one day about losing and being pissed off. And, obviously still don't like losing to this day. But he asked me, he goes, what was Roman Catholic's freshman record this year? For the West Coast people know, Roman Catholic is the Philadelphia Power in the Catholic League. And I go, I don't know. He goes, yeah, that's because nobody cares what the freshman record is. He's like, just give me some players and teach these guys how to play basketball. And, that was 2002. He told me that. It's stuck with me ever since. So I think just kind of realizing, it's not all about wins and losses and all about that. It's more about developing relationships and getting guys to trust you. And then getting guys to play for you. That's kind of probably the biggest adjustment in those first 3 years of basketball for me, was getting guys to just realize it's not about X's and O's and all that kind of stuff.
Now, the distance between Delaware and Palos Verdes is over 3,000 miles. What brought you to the West Coast?
So my wife is a television producer. So I met my wife it was actually in the summer of 2007. We were at a tailgate for Kenny Chesney, and her best friend is married to one of my high school teammates. So again, my high school teammate introduced me to my wife that day, June 23rd, 2007. We dated that summer. She was home for the summer. She was working for Maury Povich at the time in New York, as like I said, the TV producer. And we could do a whole podcast on that, Nick, just the Maury stories. But we started dating, talking, and spent a lot of time together. And then in the fall of 2007, I got a job at Marymount, DC. So we were long distance for 2-3 years, and then we got an opportunity. I got hired at Southern Connecticut State in the summer of 2010, and Lauren was living in Stanford at the time, working. Maury had moved up there, so we moved in together. We got engaged that March, and then in the summer, just late July, she got an offer to come out here and work for the Dr. Drew talk show, which was just starting. And I can tell you that the TV producer money is a lot better than assistant Division II coach money. So we made a decision as a unit to come out here and try it, and we said, if it sucks, we'll come back. And 13 years later, we haven't gone back. So it's just, it was kind of a crazy, I mean, the first time I ever stepped foot in California was the day I drove out here to move here. I'd never been here. Didn't know. We stayed on her friend's couch in Manhattan Beach for a week or so to find an apartment. And then, the only battle that I won was that I wanted to live at the beach. So we stayed in Manhattan Beach for 4 years. And then the commute kind of wore her down a little bit, and just things kind of made sense. And we moved over to the Grove. We live right around Canter's Deli in the fall of 15. So that's kind of what drug us out to California.
Between 2006 and 2012, Palos Verdes as a program won just 9 league games. How would you describe the program when you took it over?
I don't want to say anything disparaging, because there's a lot that goes into that. I just think it was a little disjointed. I think the guy prior had some just more to do. Like when I got here, I was an upset 31-year-old who just wanted to make a name for myself in coaching, and that's all I had was the program. That's all I did. She went to work, I went to the gym. There was no kids to take care of. There was nothing. And I think that's what the program needed for just to say, because again, it was trying to overthrow a juggernaut. I mean, back then Peninsula was rolling. Those were the Reese Morgan years. Reese Morgan was awesome. Like, Peninsula was winning the Bay League. Like, again, if you were a basketball player on the Hill, you went to Peninsula. Like, there was no, there wasn't a lot of family. My dad won here back then. We're starting to see that more. Like, oh, my dad won here. But back then, there wasn't a lot of family allegiance to it. It was just kind of the new school on the Hill. I mean, we've only been reopened for 20 years now, so 10 plus. We were in the infancy stages back then. So I don't think it's fair to kind of criticize the effort. I just think that it just needed some young blood and a lot of focus. Like, where that was my obsession, was when I took the job, as opposed to, somebody with a business to run and kids to raise, if that makes sense. I don't think it was anything structurally. I just think it was a time commitment thing.
You began at PV in 2012 before taking a 1-year job at Chaminade, and then you returned to PV in 2023. What would best describe your journey as a coach in Southern California?
So I started out at Viewpoint, actually. Got out here in 2012. I started Viewpoint. I struggled when I got out here. I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't have a lot of purpose. I was trying to find a job. Like, we moved on a whim, and I was kind of a pain in the ass to my wife. I'll be the first one to tell you that. And she looked at me one day. She said, "You need to get a coaching job, or I'm going to kill you." And I started looking. And I find a job at a Viewpoint in Calabasas, which is about 30 miles from Manhattan Beach. And I don't think anything of it. As a college assistant, you drive all day, you drive up and down. It's not a big deal. I'm thinking 30 miles, 30 minutes. Well, I didn't really know what that meant. Luckily for me, I had the greatest drive ever. I would go up to PCH, then over to Paga Canyon and drop right into Viewpoint. And I was super lucky to get that job too. I made great friends. Ron Quarterman and JJ Prince are still two of my really good friends. I got a chance to coach some great players. I had Johnny Juzang on a sixth grade team. I had his brother Christian as a freshman who ended up going to Harvard, a family that I'm still, very in touch with. And I go see Johnny play when he's in town with the Jazz. We had, who was it? Taryn Frank, who played Sierra Canyon. He was on that sixth grade team. I had a really good sixth grade team. I was calling guy. I called my buddy at Rutgers, who's now the head coach at Loyola Maryland. I said, Josh, I got a sixth grader you guys need to offer me. He said, you can stop this nonsense. And I had to remind him every day that I told him about Johnny Juzang when he's in sixth grade. But that was a great opportunity. And then the PV job came open in, again, the fall of 13 or the spring of 13. And I interviewed with Evan Fujinaga, got the job, and then we just got to work. And I spent 2 years there, a great 2 years, and made awesome friendships and great relationships. And then obviously, finances call your name. It's Southern California. When we moved to the Grove, the walk-on coaching stipend wouldn't have covered the gas back and forth to PV, to be honest. So just wasn't feasible to stay. So I kind of made sure I set it up for Brian to get the job and make sure that Brian was going to take over. I thought we had things going in the right direction. And I thought he could continue that, obviously, which he did and then some. And then, I got out of coaching for financial reasons. I did some AAU stuff all the way through. I couldn't walk away completely. But then I came back in 2022 to hold it down for Brian. And unfortunately, I say this, I'm still here because the plan was for me to only be here for a year. But, I'm sure we'll talk about that too.
At a certain point, we will get back to that because Brian had a indelible mark that he left on that program.
Sure.
I asked you to name an exciting game that you've been a part of, and you tabbed the 2013 PV Penn rivalry game. It was the first time that you hosted Peninsula during your tenure at PV, and you won that game 65-58. Take me back. February 2013 still stands out about that game 10 years later.
Well, it was just, I love that first team. Like that was, those guys are always my guys. Like you have teams and you do this for a long time. You always have players, but then there's teams and everybody likes their teams, but there's just a different bond. It was my first year. It was my first time as a head coach out here at the varsity, it was my first varsity head coaching job. Obviously, I've been in college as an assistant, but this is my first varsity head coaching job. And I had dudes, and I said to them one time, I don't know how you guys were 0-10 in the league this year. I mean, as you had alluded to, they had gone through it the year before. And I had a lot of talented guys coming back. Tyler Colin, who now goes by Ty Verdes, he's a platinum artist. He was tremendous. He had an offer from UC Irvine out of college or out of PV from 4 for 5, and went to prep school, and then obviously things went a different way for him. But Connor McKee, just tough, gritty dudes, they were my kind of kids, and they were so tired of getting their ass kicked that they just wanted to win. And their parents were tired of getting their ass kicked, and they just wanted to win. It was 45 people that just wanted to win, and we grinded. I got the job, like I said, first 2013, and we just kind of after that got after it. I mean, we just got after it, and these kids put to work their ass off all summer, all fall. We won a lot of big games. Like I said, we won 6 league games that year. They had won, that you alluded to, I think they had won 5 in the 5 years prior to me arriving. They were 5-45. But they had not beaten Peninsula in 8 years since I arrived. And when you get the job at PV, the only thing they talk about is Peninsula. Just beat Penn. I could have been 2-24 that year if I beat Peninsula twice. I would have had job security. And they were great. I mean, it was a great win against Peninsula. And our kids, they grew up together. They know each other. They play against each other their whole life. And, our kids really, really wanted to win that game. And they had Stanley Roberts, obviously Stanley Roberts Jr., who his dad played in the NBA. They had Matt O, who was a great shooting guard. Mickey Babbitt, went on to become a Division III All-American, and they were good. And Milch was killed us every year. I forget which one it was, but that kid lit us up every time I played him. And it was a monkey on our back. We had to beat Peninsula. We had to get over the hump. And we had a great preseason. We were playing well. We went up there and just choked. I mean, we were like 2 for 17 from 3, couldn't make a foul shot. We had all this momentum. This was our year, and we got our ass handed to us up there. And it was a rough one. But then we bounced back, and then we get them at our place. And I'll be honest, we were down 14. Matto hit a 3 early in the second quarter to go up 14. I called timeout, and I said, "Hey, you guys have been running your mouth for a year. We're going to win this game. You're going to punk out right now? Is this really what we're going to do?" I go all the time, all the running, all the days in the gym, all the early mornings. Are you really going to punk out right now? And we cut the lead to 3 by halftime. We ended up taking the lead. Connor McKeeve hit a monster 3 from the red line on an out-of-bounds play to put us up, I want to say 5 or 7 late. And we kind of knew we had it. And it was, the floor got stormed. It was the culmination to a lot of hard work. And I gave those kids something that I should say I did. They gave themselves a memory that they always talk about and we still talk about. And it was the completion of a task. And that feels really good. And it just kind of set the tone that we would compete with Peninsula. We didn't get over the hump immediately. Like it took it, what was it? It was 10 years or 11 years to finally sweep them, starting 2 years ago. We'd chipped away. But I think that was the first crack in the ice to really kind of put our program on the right track and say we can win here and you can come here and you can be successful. So that game means a lot for a lot of reasons. I just remember talking about Brian, we sat in the gym by ourselves, no one in there, and we just looked at each other and said, "Yeah, we got their ass." Like it just felt really good. Like it was, we were exhausted. Like we didn't go out, we didn't go to the bar, we didn't go, party it up. We were just exhausted because it took everything out of us that night. But it was a great win. I'd go back to that night a lot. So
it was 2014. It was the 23rd season. I'm looking at the box score now, and Peninsula had scored 22 in the first quarter, and then they only scored 23 in the second and the third. So your defense locks them down, and you guys put up 19 in the second and 19 in the third, and kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say coast, because you can't coast against a Jim Quick coach team. But right. you had some grinders on that team, and I remember I looked at the roster, and it, even somebody like Lucas Cooper, still one of those guys who just puts in the effort continuously.
Yeah, we got a couple steals. Nick, I think Jake Peterson picked Mickey Baddock back to back, and we got like 4 quick wins. And then Lucas, it just started to roll. And then there was a little scuffle with Jordan Hazard and Stanley Roberts. And it got chippy, and then we realized we were here, and it just kind of rattled them a little bit. Because we had better athletes. They probably were better. They had better basketball players, maybe you could say, but we had better athletes. Tyler Moore was a CIF for all CIF running back. Like I said, Tyler Cole was one of the best athletes I've ever coached at any level. Guy could take jump out the gym and was smooth with the ball. Connor could shoot. Jake Peterson was a real strong kid. He was second team All-Bay League that year. Nick Ball, who, he started as a junior when I wasn't there, came off the bench as a senior, and he didn't like it. Obviously, nobody likes to, take a backseat a little bit, but I said, "You're going to win us the game one day." I think Nick gave us 8 or 10 points that night, 8 or 10 big points that night, and big buckets, and yeah, we just grinded that night. It was, we weren't going to be denied. I think after the shock of them lighting our ass up in the first quarter, we said, "All right, let's go." It was, and that kind of made it sweeter too, that we had to fight for it. But yeah, that was, like you said, we had some tough dudes on that team. We could talk about Lucas Cooper for an hour too, about just what a competitor that kid was. So
he's going to like that.
Yeah.
Moving on. You list your mentors as Lee Sibley, Scott McClary, and Jason Donnelly. Tell me about those 3 and their continuous impact on you.
Yeah, so, Lee Sibley, I hear his voice in my head every day at practice or Just I probably quote him 4 times a day, or just the way I run my practices, the way I run my program, just the fundamentals of basketball, the core beliefs of basketball, how you defend, how you go about things, the toughness, the 90% of my arsenal basketball wise and stuff comes from him, maybe 80. And then, I worked for him for 7 years, and I played for him for 2. So 9 of those years were with him. I'm only 40. That's 25% of my life, right? So, and then I'm lucky enough to get the job at Marymount in 2007, to go down there to DC and learn how to recruit and do things like that. And Scott McClary was actually, believe it or not, in the small world we live in, his Lee Sibley's first coaching job was to be an assistant for Scott McClary's father at Brandywine, a high school in Delaware. So Scott went on to become a coach, and he got in with the Wooten family. So Scott worked at the Matha for Morgan Wooten for a couple years, and then he went to Bishop O'Connell in Arlington to take over and help Joe Wooten start Bishop O'Connell when they got it rolling, when they had Dave Neal and they had horses down there. What's the kid that went to North Carolina? I'm drawing a blank right now. Marcus Ginyard and guys like that. I mean, they just, the Washington Catholic League is a whole different animal. Like, it's the best basketball in the country. I know LA people won't like that. The WCAC is the best league in the country. It's not close. So Scott was a great mentor in terms of, he taught me the business of basketball, the relationships. He taught me how to be a great assistant coach, which I don't think I really was at St. Mark's because I was head coach so much, how to manage players and be a different personality and be more positive as the assistant. And he taught me a lot. He taught me the business of basketball, and he taught me how to be a really good assistant coach. I mean, we kind of, X's and O's wise, we were kind of similar because we came from the same stock. I mean, his father was one of Lee's mentors, so it just kind of passed down that way. But I learned so much. And then Jason Donnelly was the guy who actually got me the job with Scott. He was the director of operations at Villanova. So at the time, I'm bouncing around working camps, trying to just crack in. And Jason was the ops guy at Villanova at the time. So I would go up to Philly and work camp for 2 summers. And then Scott's job came up, and then Jason kind of connected us. So when Jason connected us, and then Scott found out that I got the job, or that I used to, his dad was Sib. It was just kind of just, how it rolls in the business. It's just relationships. And I believe Jason is now the interim AD at Villanova. I think he's going to take over. He was at Furman, but I think he's going went back to Villanova. I'm not sure. He was a star in the business. He's one of the sharpest guys ever. We obviously worked for Jay Wright. They got some insight into that program and how they do things. But I've just been lucky to be around great minds. I worked for Monte Ross at Delaware, who worked for Phil Martelli's team. Like I said, Scott worked for Morgan Wooten. Monte Ross played for Big House Gaines. I've been very fortunate to be around some of the great minds of the game, or people that learn from them. Working in the Wooten camp in the summers and just listening to Morgan, he would give everybody an hour at lunch and just ask questions. I've taken 4 or 5 things from those things that I still quote to this day. Never put a confused team on the floor. Things like that, things that I did all the time, taking out a marker board and drawing up nonsense and just thinking I'm so smart. And he's like, they don't know what you're doing. Never put a confused team on the floor. So I've been lucky. I've been lucky to learn from some great minds.
Here's your local one. PV competes in the super competitive Bay League that includes programs like currently undefeated Maricosta, always tough and loaded Redondo, Peninsula, which is the rival, and now Wiseburn Da Vinci. How tough is this league?
Oh, it's a monster. I'll say this. I think the Bay League is the toughest public school league in the area, but in LA. I mean, obviously the Catholic leagues are different, the leagues down there, but I think our league, year in, year out, is just a monster. There's no nights off. Obviously the only good news is there's only 5 teams now instead of 6, so we don't have to play Culver and Santa Monica too. Yeah, but you can't circle any wins. It's not a real deal. And I think Reggie might have his best team he's had since he's been at Redondo. I mean, physically they're superior, and they're really good basketball players too. Hudson Mays looks like he could go play linebacker in the NFL like his dad, but he's got a jump shot to go with it. And then Neal's a great coach. Those guys have a lot of chemistry this year. They're playing really good basketball. They really shoot it. They do what they do. And then Jeff Amaral, he's got a really nice team over there. Like Jeff's team this year reminds me of my team 2 years ago, where if you give them the eyeball test, you're going to pay for it. You're going to get you. They're not physically imposing. They only have one big guy, but they do what they do. They do it well, and they make threes. And if you do that, you're going to be in trouble. And then Peninsula's obviously well coached, and they got some big boys. And if you know anything about a rivalry game, if you're taking them lightly or you don't think you're going to be in a dogfight every single time in that game, you got to know better. So yeah, I mean, it's not a fun league to play in. I should say that. It makes it hard to schedule because you can never count on getting the automatic bid. You always got to have that magic 14 wins in mind when you're scheduling games in October or early in the year. But it's fun. I'd rather play big time games and be in games like this than being 8-0 rolling teams that aren't that good. It's just how I prefer to do it. But I enjoy it. But to me, the Bay League is the best public school league in LA.
We are going to venture away from the tough questions and go into rapid fire, the segment that will wrap up our first of many South Bay Sports podcasts. All right. Favorite NBA players then and now?
Michael, the GOAT, and then Clay. Clay's probably my second favorite NBA player of all time.
Pretty good number 2. One NBA franchise has to go.
Toronto. America. Get them out of here.
Beatles or Led Zeppelin?
Zeppelin.
Star Wars, Star Trek?
Star Wars.
Best basketball player you ever seen play?
Man. Talking about live with my own 2 eyes?
With your own 2 eyes.
I saw Michael play when I was young, but I was up in the rafters. Man. Yeah, probably Michael Jordan. I got to say, I can't say that's not it. So.
Favorite South Bay eatery and your go-to dish?
Local yolk, and I get the Manhattan omelet with the avocado and it's like a Western omelet with some avocado on top. It's delicious. It's the best place.
You have turned West Coast with the avocado and the local yolk.
Oh, yeah.
Greg, thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate your time, and I will see you soon, sir.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me anytime.
Since Greg began at Palos Verdes in 2013, the program has missed the playoffs 3 years, posting a record of 147 wins and 140 losses. The Sea King's best season came during the 2018-19 season, winning 25 games and advancing to the Division IIIA semifinals. Clark returned to the program in 2022 while Brian Edelman was battling colon cancer. Edelman passed in September 2023. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow along. You never know who we'll talk to next.